good people don't smoke marijuana.
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show. The medical marijuana for you and me. Ah, yeah, the medical marijuana. Whoa, 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 ah, yeah, the medical. It's the medical marijuana show. You will know.
I want to talk to you. I want to talk to you. Hey, boy, don't feel my world untrue. Yeah, I want to talk to you. My world can be true if you do what I tell you to. I want to talk to you.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of Medical Marijuana Radio. This one is for Saturday, the 20th of January 2017. I'm your host, Larry Love. We're here every week to bring you the latest information on the medical use of cannabis and the adult use of cannabis and recreational as well. Adult use, recreational. I guess it depends if you're an adult about it or not. And we're going to have a story about responsibility and adults and children in just a minute. But our guest today will be Veronica Carpio, and we are going to talk about industrial hemp and other things in Colorado, SB29, which is a bill that is going to inject things, chemicals or whatever, into cannabis so it can be tracked across the country. Some insane stuff. But we'll be talking to Veronica Carpio after we do some news. And as always, I've got news for you. 1, 2, 3.
I've got news for you.
Yes, I've got news for you, and this first one is coming from projectcbd.org, one of the best real informational sites out there regarding cannabis. This is a very important article. Cannabinoid pharmaceutical interactions, what you need to know. Drug interactions can be both useful and dangerous. Learn how CBD and THC may inhibit or amplify the effects of pain meds, statins, blood thinners, insulin, and more. The article, again, is at projectcbd.org. I'm just going to read you their highlights. It's a must-read for everybody. But here are the highlights, and this is by Adrian DeWitt Lee. All right, so the highlights. THC and CBD interact with many common pharmaceuticals. Cannabinoids can inhibit or potentiate the effects of various drugs. More than half of all pharmaceuticals, including THC and CBD, are metabolized by a family of enzymes called cytochrome P450. Interactions between cannabinoids and other drugs can be exploited to mitigate side effects while synergistically improving a patient's quality of life. And finally, in the highlight, cannabinoid-opioid interactions show great therapeutic potential. THC significantly enhances the pain-killing effects of opiates, while CBD is most promising for reducing withdrawal and dependence. But you need to go read this whole article because not only can it enhance the pain-killing effects of opiates, but it also, if not done correctly, can institute some kind of a overdose. So you need to really be very, very careful. So read the rest of this article at projectcbd.org. And coming up, okay, here's another one. This one is from Massachusetts. Will Massachusetts become the first marijuana sanctuary state? And you know how our federal government loves sanctuary states. This is by Dan Adams from the BostonGlobe.com. Two state representatives want to turn Massachusetts into a sanctuary state for marijuana, filing legislation that would prohibit state and local police from participating in federal cases against people or licensed operators who follow state cannabis laws. Quote, "We have a state law. It's valid, and we think it should be respected," said State Representative Dave Rogers, who filed the bill Friday along with fellow Democrat Mike Connolly. If federal law enforcement has something different in mind, they can use their own resources, because Massachusetts taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for something that goes against our laws. And this guy is right on. In a minute, we'll play another state representative from Florida that is in the same boat. But before we go into our recorded news, this is a very interesting article. I'm just going to read you the headline and a lot of stuff. You know, they've been doing testing this drug and discovering things for 55, 60 years in Israel. Cannabis research may yield a new diet drug, Israeli researcher says. So very interesting to hear that. I have struggled with weight my whole life, but let's see. We'll get more on this. This is Dr. Yossi Tam, director of the Cannabinoid Research and Multidisciplinary Center for Cannabinoid Research at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. So there's some good stuff going on there. Now, who's responsible? Who's responsible when parents drink alcohol or parents have pharmaceuticals? What are you supposed to do with those? You're supposed to lock them up. You're supposed to keep kids away from dangerous drugs and alcohol. Here in Albuquerque, it's a story, you know, I got to play it. A fifth grader unknowingly passes out pot edibles to schoolmates. These were gummy bears, little tiny gummy bears that look exactly like the children's candies. And so here's this story, and who's responsible? You tell me.
Ambulances had to be called to an Albuquerque elementary school after a student mistook her parents' medicinal marijuana for candy and then passed it out to her friends.
As News 13's Brittany Bade reports, the young students had no idea what they were really eating was pot.
Dean and Jess, these 8 to 10-year-olds know not to take candy from a stranger, but this was from a friend in the form of gummy bears. But it didn't take long for these kids to figure out what they were eating was not candy.
They look like organic-looking gummies that she bought at this, like, hip, cool candy store or something.
Intrigued, a handful of fourth-grade students inside the cafeteria at the Albuquerque School of Excellence took the gummies given to them by a fifth grader.
She had this box. It had a label on it that said Incredibles. We just thought it was ordinary gummies.
But they were not ordinary, and this 9-year-old knew it almost instantly.
And I started getting really dizzy. I felt like the room was about to flip to the side.
This box of gummies is actually marijuana edibles.
Pure THC, I mean like that's more potent than smoking marijuana.
The girl's father didn't want his family to go on camera, but thinks it is important to speak out.
First thing came in my mind is like irresponsible parents, because that's dangerous.
Experts say THC gummies can be 2 to 100 times more potent than traditional marijuana.
According to the parent, it was medicinal.
The school's dean of elementary students says 3 students ate 1 gummy last Thursday, and the student who passed them out ate 3 or 4.
She started saying she couldn't see.
Paramedics were called. They monitored students until the effects faded. The students say they know drugs are bad, and this 9-year-old is sad she accidentally did drugs.
All those lessons I took about not taking drugs were all for nothing.
The school is urging parents to be more careful with any drugs at home. CYFD is investigating the family of the girl who brought those edibles to school. Jess?
All right, thank you, Brittany. The dean says they don't believe the girl knew she was passing out drugs at school but they did suspend her for a week.
So, who's responsible? Of course, it's the parents. First of all, legal states like Colorado have rules in place that they're not supposed to be making gummy bears or any kind of a product that is mimicking or looks enticing like a children's candy or any kind of a children's thing. These rules are in place. So where's the problem here? The problem's in a couple places. One of them is the parents were not responsible. Incredibles is a product that's not made here in New Mexico, so obviously these parents, in order to get access to cannabis, drove to Colorado and came back with some Incredibles. Now, since they were shaped like gummy bears, this could have been old stock, because I don't believe that Incredibles can make things in those shapes anymore. We need to check that out for sure. But because it's not legal for adult use here in New Mexico, there are tons of people that travel every day and go up into Colorado and get access to the cannabis that they can't do. So where's the fix for this? Okay, there's a couple of fixes. Number one, most importantly, people have to, like I said earlier, lock up their medicine cabinets, their liquor cabinets, and their cannabis cabinets. It's your responsibility that your kids don't get in to your medicine, your cannabis, or your alcohol. Okay, number two, states need to legalize cannabis for medical and adult use. If that happens, then people won't be crossing state lines. They can get it safely right here, and hopefully packaging restrictions and restrictions on what they look like will take effect. So it really is the parents and the states allowing people no access to this cannabis, which is so helpful to many, many people. So that being said, let's move on. But people, lock up your stuff. Anyway, California is now legal for adult use. I have a couple stories on that. The first one is that the California labs are warning of dangerous contaminants at dispensaries.
Recreational cannabis is legal in California, as you know, as of the first of the year, but is it safe?
Yeah, there are just a handful of labs testing millions of pounds of marijuana, and they can't test it all yet. That means some of the pot on shelves now may not meet some state standards that go into effect in the next couple of months.
Right. ABC 7 Mornings anchor Natasha Zuvez shows you what you need to know before you go to a dispensary.
At the Harborside Cannabis Dispensary in Oakland, sales are brisk. All of the products on these shelves are laboratory tested for safety and potency.
We test because while cannabis itself is very safe, it can be contaminated with things that are not safe.
According to the Cannabis Industry Association, just 5% of cannabis products for sale in the state are tested for safety. And some experts believe as much as half the pot being grown is contaminated with potentially dangerous chemicals or bacteria.
Pesticides are one of those things, but there's a variety of pathogenic molds and fungus that can also grow in cannabis that can be dangerous to human beings, especially people who have compromised immune systems.
Harborside founder and potrepreneur Steve D'Angelo also co-founded the nation's first pot safety testing lab, called Steep Hill in Berkeley.
The current supply of cannabis in the retail market is, I would say, questionable.
Up until now, pot agriculture has been unregulated. That changed on January 1st. The state now requires testing for 66 pesticides, harmful chemicals, and dangerous fungi. But testing the pot is actually impossible because there are only 19 laboratories in the state currently approved to test as many as 50,000 pot farms in California. So the state has given growers and sellers until July 1st to sell the pot that they already have without testing, raising concerns about what is safe.
A very significant percentage of what we test would fail in a regulated market.
Not good.
Anthony Torres is a senior researcher at Steep Hill.
What I have here is a plated sample from cannabis that is contaminated with a few different types of funguses.
Torres says they're finding many of the compounds that will ultimately be banned by the state in samples.
This looks pretty bad, right? Growing on a plate. Can you imagine what it would look like growing in your lungs?
Unfortunately, we may know. Doctors at UC Davis Medical Center in Sacramento believe a cancer patient died from a rare fungal infection last February. Researchers were able to trace the illness back to the pot that was supposed to make the patient feel better. Even the chemicals that would have prevented those dangerous fungi from growing could harm you. Fungicides and pesticides that may be safe to use on food may not be when they are smoked.
And upon combustion, mycobutanol forms cyanide gas, which can make it into your bloodstream, and it's very toxic.
The State Cannabis Bureau has established a timeline for testing all pot. The goal, to test everything by the end of this year.
Yes, eventually everything will be labeled with testing results. Currently, if products are not tested, they'll have a sticker on them that will say so.
Back at Harborside, Steve D'Angelo says your best bet for buying tested cannabis is at a licensed dispensary. He says you shouldn't be afraid to ask for proof.
If they can't do that, then you might want to go somewhere else.
Natasha Zuves, ABC 7 News.
Yeah, testing is very important. Can't tell you. People just figuring out now. I mean, look, yeah, did we smoke cannabis for years coming from Mexico and from Colombia? That probably had mold and stuff in it. Yes, but now this is a medicine, and now it is a legal adult use product. So testing is necessary. Anything that you ingest in your body is necessary, and we want clean medicine for sure. And here's another story from California. This is one of the greatest parts of legalization, and that is removing cannabis convictions from California's records. This is Rob Bonta, a Democrat from California.
AB 1793 will help legally entitled Californians take advantage of this opportunity to clear their own records by removing barriers and streamlining the process. It will require automatic expungement of these outdated criminal convictions and shift the burden from the individual, who now has fees to pay, potential requirement of or decision to hire an attorney, multiple delay, potentially multiple court appearances. That will remove those burdens from the individual and place on the government the burden of honoring the will of the voters and automatically expunging or reducing these crimes. It will give, through this process, folks who deserve it under the law the fresh start that they're entitled to, and allow them to turn the page and move on with their lives.
Anyone in California who has a cannabis offense on their record has the legal right and the ability to go back and get that taken off their record. And it was that was news to people who generally are pretty plugged in.
The war on drugs unjustly and disproportionately targeted young people of color for enforcement and prosecution. And long after paying their debt to society, the collateral consequences of having a criminal conviction continues. We all know this. It disrupts the lives of individuals in profound ways, such as preventing them from gaining gainful employment or having a safe, secure roof over their head and seeking housing. In my view, the role of government should be to ease burdens and expedite the operation of existing law, not create unneeded obstacles and barriers.
How great is that? Make sure if you're in a state that's going to legalize for adult use, that make that part of your legalization, removing the convictions. What a great thing. Thank you, California, for that. Like I said earlier, here is a Florida Republican Congressman, Carlos Curbelo, and this is his message to Jeff Sessions.
The voices and the votes of my constituents, Mr. Speaker, matter. The 10th Amendment of the Constitution matters. And for those who like to call themselves constitutionalists, the entire Constitution has to matter, not just the parts that are convenient at a given time. In addition to the witch hunt opened up by the Attorney General's actions last week, current federal law also prohibits these businesses from deducting the common expenses associated with running a small business when they file their taxes. Expenses necessary to running a business like rent, most utilities, and payroll. Simply put, this rule places legitimate enterprises, which have been established under state law, at a major competitive disadvantage where legal employers are paying exorbitantly higher effective tax rates. That's why I introduced H.R. 1810, the Small Business Tax Equity Act, last year. This bipartisan bill amends the tax code to allow legally operating marijuana businesses to utilize common tax deductions and credits, thus providing them with tax parity. The federal government should not be ignoring states' rights and the decisions of voters and state legislatures across the country. We must work to afford all businesses selling legal products the opportunity to make appropriate deductions and contribute to our economy and create jobs. And another important point, Mr. Speaker, and again, I thank my colleague for taking this time and bringing us together to talk about this issue in a bipartisan manner. The best ally that those who are operating illegally, the drug cartels, the drug traffickers who do not pay any taxes, who target children, the best ally they have are the policies that the Attorney General has embraced.
Okay, again, that was Republican Congressman Carlos Gurbello from Florida, sticking up for his peeps. I like that. We just talked about, and I played you the fifth grader that brought some illegal cannabis gummy bears to school. In Illinois, a judge ruled that a suburban fifth grader can use her medical cannabis and have it administered to her at school.
We are at the federal court building where today that girl's parents argued that even though state law prohibits the possession of marijuana, even medical marijuana, inside of a school, that state law violated their daughter's constitutional rights to due process and the Americans with Disability Act. And today in federal court, a judge agreed that law should not be enforced. 11-year-old Ashley Surin was diagnosed with leukemia in December of 2008.
We administered chemotherapy to her for days, weeks, months.
Her parents say there were side effects to the chemotherapy and other medical treatments that brought on seizures. Ashley has been using a medical marijuana foot patch and rubbing oil with positive results.
Her brain used to be like in a cloud, and now she can think clearer and she's more alert.
The family asked the school district to store the medical marijuana on school grounds at Hanover Highlands Elementary, but the district denied the fifth grader's request because state law prohibits even medical marijuana on school grounds or school buses.
That's why we're here.
Here is the Dirksen Federal Courthouse.
This is a case of great importance,
where today a federal judge ruled that Ashley Surin may indeed use the medical marijuana at school.
They are not going to enforce the ordinance. They're not going to take any action against the parents or the child.
The Illinois Attorney General agreed not to prosecute, and the school district said its goal was to have Ashley back in the classroom with no legal consequences for staff who administer the medicine.
Fix the law that's antiquated. It hasn't caught up with reality.
And Ashley Surin's father said that his daughter has been out of school for the last couple of weeks as this legal drama has unfolded, that she misses her friends, and she's excited to be returning to school on Tuesday.
So it's going to take time for all of these new laws in new states to evolve and change. So this is a good one. Arizona generated $280 million in sales last year in 2017 in their medical industry, $30 million in tax revenue.
Arizona rejected a measure that would have legalized recreational marijuana for anyone over the age of 18, but it doesn't appear to have hurt the medical marijuana business.
Actually, it's growing. Arizona officials releasing their yearly report on medical marijuana, and based on the figures, the industry in our state is hotter than it's ever been before. It's a growing industry across the country, and that's especially true here in Arizona. The latest numbers from the Arizona Department of Health Services show there are now more card holders than ever before for medical marijuana, and they are also using more cannabis than ever before. All of it comes on the heels of an election that saw voters narrowly reject an effort to legalize recreational use of pot in Arizona.
I think a lot of people were waiting to see if it's going to pass. It's a lot easier. Hey, I'm going to try cannabis for whatever medical conditions.
Lilac Power runs the Giving Tree Wellness Center in both Phoenix and Mesa. She says as soon as people realized Prop 205 wasn't going to pass, her phones started ringing.
We saw it the day after, how many calls our front desk in both locations got. How do I get a card? Where do I go? Can you send me the details?
That interest helped fuel marijuana profits in December to their highest levels all year. In fact, 29 tons of cannabis was consumed in Arizona in 2016. That's more than double the amount from the previous year. Also moving higher was the number of card holders, with more than 114,000 now legally allowed to use cannabis in Arizona, a 35% jump. And all that green is translating into more green for the state. Nearly $280 million was generated from the sale of medicinal pot, with about $30 million of it translated into tax revenue for Arizona programs. Some experts have predicted that if Arizona joins other states in legalizing recreational marijuana, those numbers could triple. But for now, it'll be a wait and see. Several groups are working, they say, to put the issue back on the ballot, even though it lost last time, trying again in 2018, and if that doesn't work, in 2020.
Most likely, from what I hear, it's going to go through this coming session. This coming vote in November. All right, before we take a quick little break, here's a story, a short one from Australia, where Jenny Hallen is trying to, she's producing cannabis oil to help people, and she speaks out.
Okay, so I've just answered the charge. I pleaded not guilty because I don't think what is happening is right. There is no victims in this crime. Nobody was hurt, nobody was injured. Nothing has happened other than the pharmaceutical companies have shown that their drugs don't work and that cannabis oil works much better than that. So the only victim in all of this is the pharmaceutical companies, and so I think this is why we need to fight this and take it as far as we can. We need to prove that there is no access for people that are trying to get medicinal cannabis in this country. There is no legal access for people, even though they have been trying. They have been told to go to their doctors. The doctors cannot prescribe a legal product. The TGA is blocking almost every application. Doctors are getting frustrated. Patients are even more frustrated. And in the meantime, people are dying every single day.
Again, that is from Australia. We'll be right back with our guest, Veronica Carpio from the Grow Hemp Colorado. We're going to talk about some interesting stuff going on, and we're all watching Colorado. We'll be right back.
It's all about the 420 MMJRadio.
Society was under the spell of reefer madness. They were clueless about this benign herb that the 60s children were growing up using.
We had a phrase in the hippie days, and that is, do your thing.
America's public enemy #1 is drug abuse.
Marijuana is not a medicine, has no medicinal value at all. It gets you high.
Something so good can't be bad.
We made a different animal called medical cannabis and stopped calling it marijuana.
We had a goal, and that was to make the ballot and to win the right to personal use.
This is where the big shift happened that nobody was expecting.
This is getting serious. This is going to get legal, and we have to be prepared.
There is going to be accountability.
We're just starting to catch up to what the rest of the world has known for a long time.
Why were they treating it like plutonium? Why were they treating it like something that was so dangerous?
When you say cannabis, you're trying to legitimize something that is not good for America.
What we could lose is our community.
So many people are in this industry because we are passionate about this plant.
Cannabis is going to be recognized as the drug that saved America.
I'm pretty stoned on this. I smoked one whole spatty joint of Swami Select by myself, right? Is that the stoner mentality? It's just Swami being Swami.
The medical marijuana. The medical marijuana. Radio show.
Hey, this is Scott from Rare Dangness. You're listening to Medical Marijuana Radio.
And we're back. And online today, I have Veronica Carpio from Colorado, and she's with Grow Hemp Colorado. And we're going to talk about a bill, SB29, which they're trying to pass in Colorado. Welcome to Medical Marijuana Radio, Veronica.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So this seems very outrageous. I don't know where it's coming from, but tell us about what SB Bill 29 is and what it actually does.
Well, to just kind of the 101s about this bill is it wants to create a new tracking technology that is sprayed on both hemp and marijuana plants in order to track it, to supposedly prevent diversion out of our state. It's tied in with a university that will benefit from that. The state would be required to purchase the technology once it got developed, and law enforcement would be given incentives to utilize it, which is concerning because, for example, if, some marijuana or some hemp was found in Nebraska, for example, the law enforcement out there, if they had these scanners and the plant material was actually sprayed with this new technology for tracking, those Nebraska police officers or state patrol or whatever could actually identify the source it came from here in Colorado through that tracking technology, which is very concerning.
So it's sort of like a dye pack that they put on money at the bank so they can track where it's going. And so have they talked about what it is they're going to adulterate the cannabis with? And or are they just like at the beginning of this? Do they actually have a plan?
It sounds, from what the bill language says, it sounds like there needs to be some development of it, which it would be going through the university. Although there is undertone talking about that the technology has actually already been developed through some other company. We already have somewhat of a tracking seed cell technology here now, which is all through Metric. Metric is what the marijuana side is required to go through. Hemp is opposite. We do not have any kind of tracking RFID tags or seed to cell programs we have to utilize, unlike the marijuana side. This particular bill wants to incorporate both marijuana and hemp into it.
So at this point,
a problem.
So at this point, hemp is still a part of it. They haven't dropped that yet, have they?
Well, so last week when the bill dropped, I did, with one of the help of the senators that we work with, did get it removed. It doesn't reflect yet in the version that is up on the website, the legislative website, but will on the next drafting of the bill, which probably may happen next week or the week after. There has been some statements made by some of the sponsors of the bill. They're not ready to discuss things yet because there is changes being made, and hemp being removed is one of them.
Well, it makes no sense for either hemp or THC cannabis. It's not going to prevent much, because if black market stuff gets shipped across the state line, it's not going to have the tracking on it, but it's still going to be shipped across the state line. So all of this seems to be an exercise in proliferating the black market and actually not stopping it. It's actually the opposite effect, what I'm thinking anyway.
Yeah, it's just completely counterproductive, frankly. It's some company, third-party company, that wants to get exclusivity on some kind of seed-to-cell tracking system mechanism through new technology, working with one of the universities. The bill, as it stands right now, also puts requirements on our Department of Agriculture, which does not regulate marijuana other than pesticides. So it would create a huge fiscal burden for our Department of Ag to regulate this technology if and when it did happen according to the bill language. So there's red flags all over this bill. Marijuana side still needs to make a proactive effort to kill it. Hemp is the side I'm on, so that part has already been dealt with. But yeah, it's a horrible bill. Horrible.
So who do we know is responsible? Who are the legislators that are responsible for writing this? I think their names need to be out there. You know, there are elections coming up at the end of this year, and is it just because they have been against the legalization of hemp and cannabis?
So I don't want to say that necessarily. I can't remember all the sponsors' names. I have it on my phone. I don't want to put you on speakerphone, but I know one of them is Pabon. I don't think they're necessarily against marijuana necessarily. I'm guessing more so they don't understand what the bill actually means and entails. And once it dropped and went public, they've got a lot of feedback, a lot of dissenting opinion, which is giving them a crash course in education on both the hemp and marijuana side. So it seems like they're open to making changes. Ultimately, the bill just needs to die. We won't know that. We won't know what happens next until it goes to committee. So that hasn't been scheduled yet as far as I'm concerned, or as far as I can see. But everyone is actively watching it. And a bunch of senators and legislators know that hemp and MJ side are not in favor of this bill.
Right. So you obviously you have a Facebook page, and I'm sure you'll be posting information on there about who Colorado residents can call during the session in order to voice their opinion on whether obviously to be against it. I don't think many people will be for it. So it just matters about the what's happening in your session and which way the tides are rolling. Do you have a guess on whether it really has a chance of passing, or is this just they just blowing smoke up our
Well, I mean, there's always a chance it could make some headway. There's been a lot of marijuana bills that have passed that we all hated before that still passed because it had the backing of law enforcement. This tries to stroke law enforcement to some degree, so I believe some of the sponsors are more pro-law enforcement. Law enforcement is getting concerned, obviously always about the marijuana diversion, but also now somewhat about hemp, because there is one side of the industrial hemp growers that grow female only for CBD primarily as their only byproduct. A lot of them are not following the simple 8 pages of rules we have for industrial hemp and are going over the 0.3 THC total. Thus, it becomes marijuana, and they're still, basically putting it on the market when they're not supposed to. So I know law enforcement has become more aware of these type of hemp farmer issues, which could justify their support for this. Now, there will be a lot more updates going on, like Facebook, not just my Facebook, but other Facebook pages that are involved in this. But yeah, there is a proactive effort to stop this bill on both sides of the fence.
So about hemp, okay, it seems to be very controversial. Some people say it's legal in every state. Part of the agricultural bill of a few years ago. How do you feel about it? I mean, if you make a concentrate from a hemp plant, that industrial hemp plant that is, let's say, 70% CBD and under the 3% THC, but when you concentrate it, how do they rule on concentrates? Because maybe the THC gets a little higher when you concentrate it.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. So when you concentrate, it does pass 0.3. There is no technical regulation or oversight regarding those concentrates other than they need to be back to 0.3 before they go on the consumer market. So technically, what a lot of people do is either remove the THC or dilute it back down, with MCT oil or coconut oil or hemp seed oil, for example, and dilute it back down to the 0.3% THC before they put it on the consumer market. Now, depending on who you ask, some people do claim that, hemp is legal in all 50 states. That's absolutely not true. The federal farm bill, which did legalize hemp to some degree with some conditions under state Department of Ag programs and or university higher educational institutes. It makes it legal in those states under those provisions. So in the states that it's not legal. The Controlled Substance Act clearly states that there's some exempted items like non-viable seed or stock. So technically those items should be legal in all 50 states, but that's also depends on who you ask. The CBD products that are coming out of all of these different states and flowing into the other states, not necessarily legal for hemp or MJ or just legal for MJ, that they are not legal also. Technically, FDA considers any CBD product for human consumption and use adulterated as well as mislabeled. So this adulterated and mislabeled term has real legal consequences for businesses. In addition, the marijuana extraction code that came last year would also be a conflict for concentrate or resin production from the cannabis plant, hemp in particular with this discussion. And then you have the Statement of Principles, which expanded on the Farm Bill, essentially saying that 0.3 is not just THC, it's all the cannabinoids combined to be 0.3, as well as the intent is only for industrial or seed purposes, like fiber industrial seed purposes, excluding any resins, cannabinoids, concentrates, flower, or leaf material.
Wow, how complicated. That's just unbelievably complicated. And in a state of flux for sure. Testing of testing of CBD is something that it's a pet peeve of mine. I see so many products out there that are very expensive and with very low CBD actual content in it. So what are the rules? Are there rules in Colorado currently on testing the product before it hits the public?
Well, so amazingly enough, there is no rules. Basically, the only guidelines we have is what our constitutional language says, which is 0.3 THC concentrate on any part of the plant, whether living or dry. So it has to be 0.3. Our Colorado Department of Health and Environment has basically refused to regulate us until last year when they came out with a policy statement. The policy statement doesn't do really anything for us. It doesn't create a new law. It gives us no protection. And there's no testing requirement. So any testing requirement is only required by the hemp farmer through Department of Ag. The Department of Ag comes and tests us during each harvest. And other than that, any independent testing we do, it's up to us. But there is no regulation technically to demonstrate that our products are 0.3 THC or below.
Right, and what about purity wise, as far as pesticides and other adulterants in the use of growing industrial hemp? Any requirements on that currently? And do you think there should be, if you're ingesting it into your body?
Yeah, I mean, I think there should be a few requirements, but right now the current requirements are under cannabis pesticides. So our Department of Agriculture regulates pesticide use on cannabis, meaning both hemp and marijuana in this case. So any pesticide that is approved for cannabis can be used for hemp as well. Otherwise, if it's not approved, it would be you could not use it on either hemp or marijuana, and there would be some kind of consequences to that. Now, there is some other issues that have come up this last season. I've noticed through testing, not with my material, but other third-party material, is that there's been some heavy metal detections going on. So I believe that there is heavy metals and some soil remediation that is taking place, maybe perhaps on some of these fields, that is absorbing some toxins and then rolling back over into the finished product. But again, this is not something that's regulated. It's something that is voluntarily optional. And so some of the people are testing for heavy metal, pesticide, residual solvent, and potency.
Well,
not everyone is, though.
Yeah, hemp actually can pull radiation and stuff out of the soil as well. I mean, they use it in Japan, I guess, to help clean soils after spills and stuff. So it's so powerful that it does pull other stuff. So having a pure product, especially when you're ingesting it into your body, is really, really important. Because this is so new, the legalization for adult use of MJ, and of course, now being able to grow hemp is so exciting after all these years of hearing about it. It's just amazing.
It's awesome.
Now, people are making like CBD and industrial hemp only vape pens. I see them going around now. So what are they using? Do you know what they're using in order to thin it out and make it vape? Because my understanding is that it's not healthy to smoke MCT oil and VEG, PEG, all that stuff. So are they adding back terpenes? Some people are, in order to make it light enough. What do you hear that's going on? What do you see in Colorado?
I mean, there's a plethora. There's new products popping up all the time. I would say 98% of our hemp economy is CBD products right now. So they come in all forms. Things that you can eat, things you can rub on your body, things you put in your mouth, things that you can smoke. MCT oil is pretty common just all around the board for a vaporizer, or, the solvents that are being used are still the same as an MJ, where they are making isolates with hexane. People who are not familiar with hexane, if you know the Aaron Brockovich story with that attorney that won that big, huge case back in the day, that was a case over hexane. So there's still all the same solvents and emulsifiers being used in these hemp products, just like the MJ products. The only difference is the THC levels. Although there has been an ongoing issue that is not being addressed here, and I'm sure maybe some other states are starting to run into this also. We all know that hemp products are not products that can get you high or stoned because the THC is so low. But what's been happening is some of the THC, even at 0.3 levels, are accumulating in people's body, in their fatty tissues, and they are urinating hot, meaning that some of them have lost their jobs.
Right, being
by utilizing these.
Yeah, job testing and so forth. Well, I have some personal experience with some of this CBD concentrate, and someone who is not used to taking THC and starts with CBD, and their endocannabinoid system maybe isn't activated and so forth. If they took like 70 milligrams of CBD that also had 2.7% THC in it, well, they're going to be, if they took like enough of that the THC could actually get them high because they're not used to the THC in their system. So I've seen that happen with people who said, wow, I got such a buzz on that. And so that's because it's concentrated. Now, are people in Colorado smoking, let's say, high-grade industrial hemp female bud?
Well, yes, they are, but unfortunately, a lot of those buds they are smoking that are really trichome dense and rich are usually over 0.3, so technically those are not even supposed to be on the market.
Right.
Again, there's little oversight regarding that, so it ends up being in the hands of law enforcement to deal with, which is just a complete headache for them. But yeah, there are people that have hemp buds that they are either making into like tea or smokable products or like a no tobacco type product in place of cigarettes. It's really about that 0.3 number because it's very, very hard to go to full harvest on a female-only hemp genetic in the field outdoors without passing 0.3. A lot of people will claim that they have 12, 14, 15, 18% CBD, and it's still 0.3. I have thousands of test results from the last 4 years from myself and other third parties, and I've never, ever seen a female-only hemp plant go past 7 or 8% and CBD and not past 0.3 THC. So there seems to be some kind of barrier there genetically.
Can that product that is over the 3% THC, the hemp industrial hemp product, can that be sold as products in the MJ dispensaries?
No. So right now, that's not at all allowed. The only thing that they have provisioned allowance for is the use of an ingredient. For example, in the MIPS. MIPS are manufacturers of infused products on the MJ side. They are allowed to take in, I believe, concentrate, CBD concentrate, but they have to mix it with THC in order to put it back into their dispensary. So right now, dispensaries are not able to carry any kind of hemp products. They're not allowed to carry anything but MJ products that go through the metric system. Now, I am attempting to possibly run a bill this session. I'm going to do 2 bills this session, but one bill is going to try to allow a doorway for hemp products to be sold at the MJ locations legally without restrictions.
I totally support that. I mean, there needs to be a legal outlet for the industrial hemp plants that are testing over the maximum limit of THC. So, I mean, why destroy that stuff and why make it illegal and sell it illegally? So
that won't be an option. No. That will never be an option here, just because 0.3 is in our constitutional language. So anything over 0.3 is considered marijuana and technically is not able to leave the registered hemp premise. So you cannot do anything with it unless it's for personal use, but it cannot go onto the consumer market. So unless there was like some kind of constitutional change in our language, which would require a ballot vote, we're stuck at 0.3 because we voted on that number in the state.
Right.
We didn't legislatively enact it. We voted on ballot vote.
So what are legal hemp growers supposed to do with product that tests too high? What are they supposed to legally do?
They can't do anything. They can destroy it. They can use it to feed their animals if the animals come on the field. They can eat it. It just can't leave the registered premise and go on the consumer market.
Well,
if it hits 1%, then it definitely has to be destroyed. And there is regulatory provision that allows the Department of Ag to, notify law enforcement as well if it's over 1%.
This is a evolving industry, okay? It's going to take time to really figure all this stuff out. We're learning every day. So, I mean, these laws and bills are going to have to evolve over the next few years to make it better. It makes no sense to grow a industrial hemp product that's, too high in THC and not be able to do something with it, whether it moves into the MJ world as far as, products are concerned or whatever. It shouldn't be destroyed. So I think that people like you who are advocating and activists trying to move this industry further, we out here, the consumers, we thank you for that because we've been fighting for this plan for a long time. So why don't you give out your contact information if people would like to get a hold of you and your webpage and your Facebook.
Yeah, Facebook and my webpage is Grow Hemp Colorado and growhempcolorado.com. And again, Grow Hemp Colorado is an open source hemp organization. We're super active in legislation, so it's a great place to come get educated on facts and stay involved and figure out what the next steps are for either federal approval on certain parts of the hemp plant or, language that your state could consider adopting for your hemp program.
Absolutely, yes. So, we are in a session right now and trying to pass for adult use here, and we're watching. Everybody is watching what's happening in Colorado. You guys were the first ones out of the gate really to get going, so we're watching. So thank you for watching, your legislators and making sure that we know what they're trying to slip into these bills. It's people like you that are going to help this industry move forward. So, Veronica Carpio, thank you very much for talking on Medical Marijuana Radio today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you. You have a great day.
You too. We'll be right back after this.
Pretty little head of yours, what goes on in that place in the dark? When I used to know a girl and I could have sworn that her name was Veronica. Well, she used to have a carefree mind of her own and a delicate look in her eye. These days I'm afraid she's not even sure if her name was Veronica. Do you suppose her hands and hands are eyes of Veronica? Count her eyes. medical marijuana. The medical marijuana radio show.
Well, I want to thank Veronica Carpio for coming on today and telling us about silly Bill SB29 trying to track cannabis by adulterating it. How crazy is that? Stay on top of it, people. Check Veronica out at Grow Hemp Colorado, her Facebook page, and her website. I also like to thank my two radio mentors, both with the initials HS. Thank you for your inspiration. If you'd like to be a guest on the show, if you have a cannabis website, you're an activist, an advocate, a product, info@MMJRadio.com. Also, if you're a patient, you want to tell your story, info@MMJRadio.com. If you'd like to listen to some of our older shows, this is our 9th year, go to medicalmarijuanaradio.com. Also, MMJRadio.com, get you there a little faster. Our YouTube channel is LSLove88. SoundCloud, we're MMJ Radio. On Spreaker, we're MMJ Radio. We're also on CannabisTube.net, Spreaker, and iHeartRadio. You can hear us on the Time for Hemp Global Broadcasting Network. And we're also available on Now TV, channel 937. And also the Canna channel coming soon.
Shalom.
Oh yeah, fuck Trump.
Bapu buyeta, suyeta, bapu didi, sabapu bapu bapu.